Now, if we were going to like go back, rewind the clock a little bit to the Silver Age of comics, we would see an industry on the precipice of a collapse. I'm using big words, but bear with me. Basically, what happened was during the World War II era, a lot of people were in need of seeing something to uplift their spirits, and obviously that was superheroes. Whether that was through the little wonky, I guess, stories that were told, of course they were good, right? I'm not gonna say they were bad, but the stories were a bit more kooky than they would be today, or just through, you know, the war bonds, right? Seeing heroes support the effort when everything seemed down. And picture this. Imagine you're a kid, and your mom or your dad or both gets enlisted into the army, whether that's through an infantry or through a support role. You're going to feel very anxious, or you don't know if your parent is going to come back. Is my dad going to come back from the war? But reading a comic book, this leads to like a very naive perspective where the kids are like, I'm reading about these heroes fighting the war. Maybe they're fighting alongside my parents, so now I don't have to worry that much. But after that, after the conflict was over in world history, everything went down. We didn't really need comic books until the Silver Age just sprung it back to life. The little injection that it needed, right? What it did was it was the starting point for Marvel, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man. All of those things were becoming big. It was a sort of DC reinventing their characters, like the Flash, Jay Garrick into Barry Allen, Alan Scott Green Lantern being reinvented into the Silver Age Green Lantern, otherwise known as Hal Jordan. At the end of the day, what it really did was show the industry that we could really play with a lot of sci-fi, science fiction elements, a lot more bigger and broader concepts. But what happened was that they used a lot of their ideas, right? If you look at the Flash, for example, this is going to be a goated segue. If we look at the Flash, what it really started off with was a lot of like time travel, inventing the multiverse, having it like streamline DC cosmology by having Earth 1 or Earth 2, I don't remember, but one of the Earths being integral to the JSA, Jay Garrick and Alan Scott. That was their world. Then the other world was for Hal Jordan and Barry Allen. The reinventions were on a different world, so you're able to choose which version that you like the most and which one that you wanted to follow. You could tell, especially going from the early like 30s comics where all of it was just either political or just pulpy, they did all they could in that time frame of the 50s. But after that, we're like, what should we do now? We're kind of at a loss for ideas. What should be our main goal going forward? How do you make your main character, your protagonist, interesting? It's through conflict. And what's the easiest conflict? Villains, right? An antagonist, somebody to antagonize the hero. It's like literally in their name. But once you've used a lot of these creative characters already and you're at a loss of what to do, what's the best thing to do? Put them in Photopea. I sound broke as hell. Putting them into like Photoshop and turning up the hue and saturation to kind of make them an inverse or the reverse isn't exactly the most creative thing. Turning the red into the yellow, so to speak, if you know what I'm talking about. Not like that, but you know what I'm getting at. If these writers really put all of their effort into these characters, making it so that these characters, while they were kind of basic in the beginning, eventually they added more depth to the point that they'd become integral to the superhero rivalry space, right? They became so good that they could stand side by side and against a hero of that caliber, being one of, if not their main villain. So what I'm going to be talking about in this video is the best Dark Reflection characters that are like two sides of the same coin, not like a Batman or a Joker, but literally in terms of course, their morality and what they believe in, but also how they look, or even the abilities that they have. They're pretty similar. So that's what I want to talk about today. And since I already talked about the Flash, let's use that as our little segue to the next point. The first character that I should talk about, who's honestly the embodiment of a Dark Reflection, that's Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. And he just really is the benchmark of a Dark Reflection. Not only does he just look like Barry with just inverted colors, he has similar powers, but just more destructive. But there's even times where he just reconstructs his entire face to look like Barry Allen. And in general, he's kind of like Barry's personal devil. He's always there on his shoulder to basically push him towards different things, right? Trying to push him to kill him, but he's a paradox. You can't really do that. The funny thing about Eobard Thawne, which makes it so weird, is that while he is the quote-unquote ultimate hater, he never really can be, because at heart, in his core, he is the ultimate superfan. In the 25th century, he was obsessed with being the Flash or the Flash's sidekick. And when the Flash actually came to the 25th century by accident, Thawne already had his powers. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to meet with you and I'm going to prove to you that I could be your sidekick. And he ended up being the ultimate fraud. He ended up committing crimes or creating crimes or making people do certain things just so that he could solve it. And the Flash caught this man red-handed. It just stopped right there. He beat his. But then again, that does not keep him down for long. When he went back to the past, he was like, I am going to prove myself once again that I do matter, that I just made a mistake and I could redeem myself. But then he saw Wally West and he saw that, welp, I'm easily replaceable. Then another thing happened. He was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fulfill my role of being the biggest hater because I saw that I'm actually supposed to be the Flash's biggest enemy. This is what is written in stone. I might as well just play it up. And play it up he did. This man, all the worst things in Barry's life, he caused it, while Barry Allen always strives to create hope, to create connection. This man has so much motion, he should probably be followed by millions of Blue Lantern rings. But at the end of the day, he builds progress. He wants connections. If you look at his multiversal travels, all that he does is he builds a branch and he maps out the entire multiverse. He tries to make it easier for himself, for allies, and people all around in the bleed, everywhere in these 52 plus worlds, so that they can travel better, so we can have better connections from people on the other side of the vibration. If you look at the Reverse Flash, all he does is destroy. If you think about it, if we look at Barry Allen and all of his efforts as the Shattered Dimensions Spider-Man skill tree, this is such a crazy shout out, but imagine that as this. Barry's everything, his life's work is the Shattered Dimension skill tree, and that he is that one dot in the middle. Reverse Flash is that person who puts his hand in the cobweb and destroys everything. That is his play. He is the corruptive force. He's so corruptive that a lot of the multiversal variants of Reverse Flash can come together to create a force so potent that it could harm the source of all creation. That is who he is. And he tried his best to make Barry Allen as lonely as possible because he can't kill him because that would prevent his own existence. So what he did was like, I don't know, push him down some stairs. This man is mad petty to like moving his hand from catching a ball from his father. I don't know if that was the ball winning play to make his father love him or something, but that ball meant something. That's the reason why he did it. He retconned his best friend. He did something to his dog. He killed Barry's mom. That of course brought him to be a forensic scientist. Of course, in my previous video, I did say that I didn't like this retcon, making it so Reverse Flash did all of these things because it kind of lessens Barry's character, but at the end of the day, it is canon, we have to roll with it, so who am I to complain? And in the Flash, their main thing, what he aims to destroy is love. As a speedster, you really do need a lightning rod, and a lightning rod is somebody who can anchor you when you're going too fast, to prevent you from being lost in the speed force. They bring you back, people that you love a lot, so he tries to kill them, and in multiple times he does succeed. But if we're going to the future, to right now, what's really interesting is that he's actually not even in play. This is one of the coolest relationships and dynamics in comics because it actually has a definitive ending that has lasted almost 5 years. In Williamson's run in the Finish Line storyline, what happened was Barry actually fully just accepted Eobard. He's like, you know what, I'm not gonna hold on to all of this hate, I'm gonna accept all of it, right? I'm not gonna hold on to it because me hating you fuels your hatred of me, and it very much creates a cycle. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna stop it in its tracks. And Thanos trying to rile him up. He runs towards him, but Barry vibrates at a specific frequency. He becomes his lightning rod, and his timeline gets reset. So instead of killing him, he actually goes back to being a happy Flash fan working at the Flash Museum. So everybody has a happy ending at the end of the day. So that's really, I love definitive endings, and Williamson gave us just that. Now, the next dark reflection I want to talk about is Cletus and Eddie. Carnage and Venom. Now, in general, the direct connection, the obvious one, is that Venom is the father of Carnage. Simple as that. But if we're going to talk more about the people themselves, the people behind the mask, what we really start to see, if we start to pick it apart, are two people born from trauma, but who deal with their pain in different ways. Both of them were in very abusive situations. Eddie, in particular, he was somebody who accidentally killed somebody, but there wasn't really Catholic guilt, but there was a part of him where he was like, you know what, I want to come out clean. I want to plead guilty, but his father had none of that. He swept all of that under the rug to clear his son's name. He actually beat his son up so that he wouldn't plead guilty. He did all of that because, as you might expect, what your kid does has a direct connection and reflection onto you as a person as well. So you wanted to cover that up. Cletus, on the other hand, he had to deal with a lot of like sadistic abuse from, of course, his family, but also you have to remember he was in the Saint Estes, I'm pretty sure. Like, was it a Catholic school or an orphanage? Let me know down below. But either way, Cletus, instead of being like Eddie, who kind of internalized his rage and kind of built up more of a self-loathing personality, and then eventually a psychological need to protect the innocent, Cletus, instead of internalizing it, he externalized all of that rage onto the world, becoming a mass murderer, right? Killing everybody in a way that felt euphoric onto him. Eddie is a person that lies to himself about where he stands on that morality chart. Cletus really denies that he doesn't need anything other than Carnage, but obviously he would have loved to be somebody who was loved, but unfortunately he didn't grow up in that position. The cool thing about like Eddie and his connection with the symbiote, he says we, Carnage says I, right? There is this sort of very volatile, kind of abusive codependency between Venom and Eddie. Honestly, their coexistence is what creates Venom. Technically, when you think about it, all of the other hosts of the symbiote aren't Venom. Venom is when Eddie and the symbiote comes together. That is who Venom really is. Everyone else is kind of a fraud. But he became a lethal protector, and eventually it led to some sort of, at the end, level of redemption. He became better. He was able to defeat those darker impulses. Venom as well. Venom went on a complete character arc. He was a very violent creature, but through the development with Eddie, through the development with Flash Thompson, bringing him into this better light as a person and becoming somebody who wants to protect the innocent, become a true protector, that was when there was a pure connection made between the both of them. But Carnage, on the other hand, they see themselves as one, right? That's why they say I. They are closer than brothers, and when they're apart from each other, they don't feel whole. And why is that? Well, if you think about it, Carnage is a suit of blood, right? The only reason why he looks so red is because the symbiote bonded onto a cut onto his arm, onto Cletus's arm, and then when it fully folded and molded itself onto his body, it was just the symbiote covered in blood, which is honestly metal as hell. But either way, they have a direct feed within each other, trying to feed their hatred and desire for creating chaos and anarchy. That is who Carnage really is. It is this kind of battle between redemption and nihilism. Venom wants complete atonement. Carnage wants just obliteration. Their pain, Venom felt like the symbiote coming to him was this sort of blight, this demon that God put onto him to atone for his sins. While Carnage feels like this is a glimpse of what I've always wanted to be, to kill more. It gives me the stepping stool to become better at my craft. And they both become gods. I haven't read Al Ewing's and like the Ram V Carnage stuff, but I know through like Donny Cates and the King in Black, they both become cosmic forces. They ascend beyond the street level villain archetype into greater forces. Of course, with Venom becoming the King in Black, gaining all of this access to the symbiote hive mind, to Carnage becoming this almost dark messiah to bring about the cult of Null, to bring Null into the main reality, and then to obviously usurp that power to ascend to godhood. He becomes a god killer, forming his own all-black the Necrosword. It's called the All Blood, and he uses it to become a killer of gods, to destroy as much as possible, to the current era where Eddie and Carnage actually bond because Eddie was going to die, and Carnage was like, you know what, we're in this both very weird predicament, let's just bond and help each other. And Carnage, it's so weird because Venom was on this case to kill this serial killer that was kind of hijacking planes, who thought it was his holy work to do this, and he was going out of his business to deal with these things. And while he managed to get rid of that serial killer, it did end up with him saving a bunch of people in that crash, but then he blacked out, and then he was stuck in this sort of really cool mind space where Carnage actually told to him, or no, Bailey revealed to him that Carnage killed all of those passengers. So while Venom seemed like an actual devil on his shoulder, Carnage is actually that. And this duality is in full motion at the moment. Right now, read Eddie Brock Carnage by Charles Soule. It's actually really good, and it may be the epitome of this dynamic, so yeah, check it out. Now, the next set of characters I want to talk about is one of the greatest rivalries of all time that's very underrated, and that is Hal Jordan and Sinestro. So as many of us know, if you're watching this video, willpower is of course the ability of the Green Lantern Corps, and their direct opposite, their main enemy, is fear, the Yellow Lanterns, created by Sinestro. Both Hal and Sinestro believe in having greater ideals and pushing order, right? They're both quote-unquote peacekeeping forces. But Hal, ever since the beginning in like Secret Origin and stuff like that, Emerald Dawn, he was a maverick, right? He believes in breaking all the rules and doing what you think is best for the betterment of not only yourself, but the people around you. Freedom and choice is what leads to peace. Sinestro believes the total opposite. He believes through total power and control is how peace is made, and he enforced it with his Green Lantern ring. He felt like his will was stronger than the people of his planet, so that he could, in effect, keep them kind of like cattle, make them follow what he wanted. But after he got caught by the Guardians of the Universe, they expelled him. They just banished him. They didn't even change his beliefs. It just radicalized it to the point where he's like, peace can only be solved through absolute authority. And he didn't just push it on Korugar, his home planet, anymore. He tried to enforce it on the rest of the universe. And when they started, it was like a master-student dynamic, right? Hal being the mentee, Sinestro being the mentor, but Hal eventually surpassed Sinestro not just in will, but in faith and what he believed the Green Lantern Corps could do. Sinestro, after like being caught in all this stuff, he's like, you know what? I don't need a moral anchor. I just need to face the hard truths, and that is people aren't going to listen to you if they don't either respect you or they aren't afraid of the consequences, so I have to be the big dog. I think Hal kind of looks at Sinestro as a cautionary tale of what he could really become if he believes or feels like tyranny is the best case scenario, because they both have strong convictions in their beliefs. If he manages to fall, it will lead to greater consequences, and that happened to both of them, right? Sinestro, his fall to villainy, his entire descent wasn't born out of selfishness or malice. This man does not back down from what he believes in, and to preserve order of the entire universe, this is what must be done. But Hal, he had a fall from grace just like Sinestro, when he was possessed by parallax, and it caused him to be driven by madness. It wasn't exactly a loss in belief, but it was a loss in self. It was completely different, but you can see the mirror already creating itself. Hal kind of became a symbol of rebirth though, because he was trying to redeem himself when he came back. Sinestro just felt like he was right all along. He doubled down. But at the end of the day, Hal and Sinestro are kind of this tale of legacy and godhood. Hal became a light in creation, a light in the darkness, while Sinestro did his best to snuff out that light in the name of peace. They both have very valid ideologies. The way they go about doing it can be very controversial, even Hal. So what do you guys think? And let me know down in the comments below, who do you agree with the most? But you guys are just gonna say Hal, but let's move on to the next character. And next we have the Wolverine Sabertooth bond. So now if you look at the both of them, they're pretty similar. Nature versus nurture. It's the choice between them that kind of separates them, because if you think about it, both of them have heightened senses, healing factors, heightened abilities, and animalistic rage. But one of them believes in struggling to get towards their perceived humanity. The other person, Victor, he doesn't care. Why should I pretend that killing doesn't feel good to me? They're both killers, but one of them feels like they should be more than that. Wolverine's like, I can be something else. There are more parallels. They have been tampered with by the government psychologically, physically, to be killing machines. But Logan, through slowly but surely getting his memories back, he feels like, okay, there was a soul behind before I broke. There's something for me to strive towards. Victor's like, this is confirmation to the point where nothing actually matters. All these memories that I might or might not have, they are like unreliable. Why should I try to claw towards something that might not even be true? Why should I be something more than what I am now? Is that even more if I'm trying to deny the trueness within myself? That's kind of what he thinks, and there's always this little bit of a theory that they both are brothers, and while this hasn't ever been confirmed, and it seems pretty obvious considering they have similar abilities, metaphorically it'll always be there, because think about it, he always celebrates Wolverine's birthday, but in the worst way possible. This man is a hater to the nth degree. If you guys don't know him, Benjamin Percy's run in particular, he does the most heinous thing of all time. He kills Wolverine's kids, I'm pretty sure Dakin was in there too, and he used their limbs to create the happy birthday sign. Oh my. It kind of follows that sort of nihilism aspect that I mentioned before, but it also makes all of his statements hypocritical, because there is this sort of codependency within him and Wolverine, because without Wolverine, there's nobody to prove that he's stronger. So yes, there is a bond between them that he obviously cares about. But at the end of the day, he believes in the predator-prey mentality, which is rich. There is no code. Wolverine, he has a sense of honor because obviously the X-Men's ideals that he has to follow, and his samurai code. Sabertooth, he's like, well, why? Why should I hide behind the mask of humanity? And what makes it really sad is that we've seen Sabertooth redeemed, right? Through brainwashing, through inversion, through magic, through even like voluntarily teaming up with the heroes in like Krakoa. We've seen what a redeemed Sabertooth looks like. It either falls on one or two categories. One, he doesn't believe he should be redeemed and he's not worth it. Or two, he just doesn't care. He doesn't want to pursue that. He doesn't feel like he needs to be saved. That's what makes the rivalry between Wolverine and Sabertooth so interesting for the past How long has it been? How long has Wolverine been a thing? Like, past like 50, 60, 70 years? 60 probably years, right? This man, they've been at it for a long time. And how long has Sabertooth been alive? Almost the same amount of time as Wolverine. Is he older? Let me know down in the comments below, because I honestly forgot. But now let's move on to our next character. And finally, we have Reed Richards and the Maker. And oh my gosh, the Maker gotta be one of, if not the best new villain of all time, because he's just Reed Richards' one bad day. Every single like flaw that the main Reed experiences, like arrogance, distance, masking his coldness with intellect, right? Saying, I'm busy, I'm doing something. The Maker indulges in that. He believes that's who I am. It's a warning to Reed what he could possibly become, because he, right now, Reed sees science as a gift, a way to elevate humanity, a way to make this unsolvable solvable, right? He sees it as a way to protect, to understand the multiverse. That's what science is. The Maker sees science as a way to rearrange, to destroy, and not to build. He feels like he has to make everything down to a way that he can control it. He wants order, but on his own terms. Unfortunately, if you take a look at like Ultimate Reed Richards and his progression, unlike Reed, who has that anchor through love, like his connection with Sue Storm, his wife, Johnny, and Ben, and his children, Reed doesn't have that. His love failed. I'm pretty sure in the actual run he cheats, Sue Storm actually cheats on him with, and I haven't read it in a long time, with Namor. It actually happens, and obviously his team falls apart. He was left alone. His universe got completely destroyed. It collapsed in the incursion. So at the end of the day, what does he have left? His mind. He was left alone to explore his own thoughts. And a man who loses everything and he has this bundled up genius, what happens? What do you think would happen? It changes. It curdles up into obsession. What could I have done differently? What could I do now to make it better? How could I take advantage of other worlds, other people to get what I want? And then that turns into ego, and then that turns into a god complex. And that's what makes the Maker such an interesting dichotomy to the mainline Reed Richards. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care. Deuces.